Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome back to our weekly beer tasting series, now in 2022. We are going to bring something a little different to you today. We're going to be doing Canada Does Germany. Hello everyone, welcome. Wasn't that a lovely 5 seconds of a preview video that was not actually the preview for this tasting? It's finally happening. I'm so excited. It's our cabin event with someone from cabin. I'm joined by Hayden Deuce from cabin. Hello Hayden.
Hello everybody. Nice to be here.
It's going to be a heck of a night. I'm so stoked for this. So we're going to start with something a little bit old with super saturation, jump into the It's Amazing evening course, and finish off with super juicy, just so we're not doing 3 hazy IPAs in a row, which is, to a point, something you're a little tiny bit known for, is the hazy IPAs.
It sure is, yeah. So, we love making them.
And you are very well known for them. I think it is no exaggeration to say that super saturation is our best-selling item in the store, ahead of everything else we sell. It is what I would think very comfortably you're best known for as a brewery. I mean, maybe not these new cans, but...
Yep, it sure is. That was this beer was one of the first beers we made. It was our third beer. So we started off with 2 core beers, Retro Spectrum and Sunshine Rain, and then we made this as a seasonal for when we opened our tap room back in 2019. But it was so good, it was so popular. We made it a second time and a third time, and now it's our best-selling beer. And as you can see, we've just moved over to printed cans, so they've got a bit of a metallic sheen on them there. Just because of the volume makes it worthwhile to do so. Yeah.
All right, I'll put it to you this way. The first hard question of the night, yourself, you're in the tap room, super saturation or Sunshine Rain?
Myself, it's a tough one. I think super saturation. Yeah, it's just a bit more thirst quenching. It's a bit easier drinking. Love that aroma, really do. And I love the hazies. And you know we love the hazies. We keep pumping them out almost on a weekly basis. So I don't know. I can't go past them.
So now we started driving up to cabin a little bit before the pandemic. Tell us a little bit of history of cabin. I mean, it's not a really long history, but it's kind of jam-packed. There's a lot to get through in like 3 years.
Yeah, it's like we just had our 3-year anniversary in December. A lot of work, obviously, before that to get things up and running. Me personally, I started brewing beer back in, it was when I was still at university. So 1994, I brewed my first batch of beer. So I've been sort of in the brewing side for a long time. But yeah, got together with a couple of friends from the homebrew club here in Calgary. And we, every home brewer hears this from their friends. They hear, oh, that's great, you should open a brewery. And we're like, no, we don't want to open a brewery. And then I think we all just had a midlife crisis and realized we're going to be stuck in our jobs for another 20 years and didn't want to do that. So here we are, 3 years later, we're still doing what we love doing, which is make good beer and share it with our friends.
I will point out that I was not the only one who immediately noticed the bookshelf color palette. It was just about our first comment the second we got the cameras rolling.
I was saying before we came live, that's what happens when you have a pandemic. You have way too much time at home and you get to organizing a bookshelf. So
it looks really sharp. We can't be the only ones who comment on it.
Yeah, everyone does, which is kind of fun. It's I was a English lit major at university, so I've always been into books, into reading. So, but it was a disaster back there before COVID kicked in, and now we've actually organized things. Although it's color coded now, I don't know where everything is.
I was going to say,
look at it.
I'm pretty sure that had a blue cover, but it might have been. I can't imagine.
The cover is blue, but then the spine is black.
The spine's white.
Like, yeah. This book. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about, you mentioned you've been brewing since '94. Are most of the breweries at cabin your home brewing recipes? Are they some of the stuff that your other partners brought in, or are these things that kind of are newer than that?
Most of them are newer than that, to be honest. We brought back, so our Retro Spectrum Pale Ale, that was Jonas, our head brewmaster. That was his sort of award-winning homebrew recipe that he picked up a bunch of awards with. So that was always a no-brainer. And we brought back a few, like there's our Simple Pleasures English Mild. That was one of my homebrew recipes. The Cool As Cucumber Lime Goza, I made that at home for the first time 5 years ago or something. And it went down really well. I brewed it right in the middle of summer and we crushed it on those really hot days, and we figured that'd be a fun one.
That did really well for us as well, actually. We really like that.
Yeah.
I think that's my favorite of your sours.
It's a real pain in the butt to make as well, because we get all the cucumbers in. We have to literally we get a production line, hand peel all the cucumbers and then put them in a blender. We use some of that to make some cocktails as we're going because it tastes really good. But the whole brewery just stinks of cucumber. And Connor, our sales rep, he cannot stand cucumber. He'll drink all of our beers. He'll sell all of our beers, but he cannot stand cucumber. So he gives that one a wide swerve when we're making that beer.
And you can't include the peels because they'd include bitterness?
Yeah, that's right. We try and just get rid of that just for the astringency that it would throw into it.
So tell us a little bit about Superset. You mentioned, it started out as a seasonal, it started out as this thing, and then it kind of ballooned out of control. Now, we heard this a little bit when we talked to 88, when they had Ring Pop do kind of the same thing. I mean, talk to us a little bit about the early days of Cabin. I've been dealing with this since almost the very beginning, but not quite. Catch us up on like the earliest days of Cabin, because now it's like, oh, Cabin, there's super saturation, all their cool seasonals, and the new saturation flavor always sells out right away. You're kind of big news. You feel very established. Talk to us about those early days a bit.
The early days were fun. Like looking back, it feels like a lot longer than 3 years, because for those first, probably the first 12 months, the three of us, the three founders, we did almost everything. So, canning day would be, Jonas would be brewing and Darren and I would be off packing on the canning line. Then I would literally be wheeling it to the back door and putting it into the back of my Dodge Grand Caravan, because we didn't have a delivery van at that time. And then I was out driving all around the city, dropping the stuff off. All the while stopping and checking my phone and trying to catch up on emails and social media and all that fun stuff. And then I'd get back to the brewery and then I'd have to go work in the tap room after that as well. So those were a lot of fun, but man, that's hard work. And I think any small business opening up knows that and goes through it. We realized after about a year that, you know what, it might be better if we bring in some people who actually know how to do these jobs that we're trying to do and free us up to sort of grow the business and get out there and tell the Cabin story. But, that first year was tough. We started off, we thought it was a different time. Even 3 years ago, we thought, you know what, we'll start with 2 core beers. If we do a seasonal once a month, that should keep people coming back. For the first year, we struggled to keep even 4 beer on tap because we wanted to make sure we had 4 beer so that we could do a tasting flat. But, sometimes it went down to 3. So if you came in, you might get like 2 5-ounce glasses of Super Sat because we didn't have a 4th beer to put on it. And
not bad problems to have, really.
Not bad problems to have, I know. We got one Google review from someone complaining about, the place is great and the people are friendly, but I wish they had a better beer selection. It's like, come on, we're trying our best, trying to keep up here. So once we got some staff in, freed ourselves up, once we got a couple of extra tanks so that we could make a little bit more beer, we're able to start pushing out more seasonals. And what we've seen, and everyone tuning in here obviously likes drinking a lot of different beers, and we do as brewery owners. When we go out, we're always looking for the newest things. So we just really wanted to do what we know we like as beer drinkers, which is go somewhere, try something new, try different iterations of that new beer, try whatever, and try something different, try something weird, try something you haven't tried before. So we're lucky now, we're in a position now where we can start pushing out a bunch more beer, and this year we've already put out, it's at least 1 a week, and it's going to be carrying on for the foreseeable future. We've got another release this Friday, we've got another release next Wednesday, we've got a release the Wednesday after that. So they're coming thick and fast. So apologies to your wallet for all of the beer that we're throwing away.
Yeah, we'll somehow get through. I actually wanted to say, like, you've grown just, for your very first seasonal, or what I think was very close to your first seasonal, it's grown into its own family of beers with super saturation and super duper saturation and summer saturation and all of the others. I know I'm missing a couple. Like, it's almost become its own sub-family of the Cabin brand.
I know, yeah.
And I
It
can't
was just
imagine you expected that.
we did not, and it's weird. There's someone who was it, Kirk from Zero Issue said that. He said, "You don't get to choose your seasonals, your customers. No, you don't get to choose your core beer. Your customers decide that." And I was like, "Oh yeah, whatever. Here are our two core beers." And then suddenly, when you start seeing the demand for one particular beer just keep going and keep going, you're like, "Okay, I guess we'll just have to give the people what they want and keep making it." And it's such a basic, like the can is it's just so basic and simple, and bold colors. You can easily switch them around. It didn't take a massive overhaul to come up with these different styles of super sat. We had our total saturation, which was our 10% triple IPA. We've got others in our brain that we're thinking of. We're thinking all sorts of different fruit that we can throw into it. We're thinking a winter saturation. We're thinking a desaturation for a non-alcoholic at some point would be really fun to do. So eventually I've scared Jonas. I said I want to get 12 different saturation beers and put them into a 12 beer mix pack. So watch for that sometime, maybe, but no promises.
I had a question come in. Has super saturation always been the same recipe from day one, or has it kind of evolved over time?
No, that's a good question. So when we started, the very first batch we did for the tap room, which was supposed to be a sort of a one-off seasonal, we sourced some Galaxy hops, which we loved working with when we were homebrewers, from Phil Bryan at Last Best Brewing. We bought some off him and made this beer, and it was like, so good, Galaxy, this is great. And then we realized when we had to make it again, we couldn't actually get Galaxy hops because they're really hard to get your hands on. And as a new brewery, we couldn't lock down any contracts. So we switched over. The next batch, we use a hop called Brew One hop, which kind of came across less tropical, a bit more grassy, wasn't that great. And then we started playing around Simcoe after that, and Citra and Amarillo. And since then, those are the three hops we're stuck with. We've changed like the hop dosages when we're putting them in, just little tweaks here and there, like not much that you would discern, but just trying to make it more drinkable and tastier the whole way along. So the hops changed. The grain, I'm just looking at the grain bill. We actually switched out and started using some more Pilsner malt in it in place of two-row malt. It just gives it a bit of a lighter color. And then balanced it out with some red wheat to help with that body as well. So we always, like all of our recipes, if we do tweaks, they're very, very minor tweaks. But typically we stick with, especially with the hops, because that really gives the character for the beers. That keeps them, consistent, because that's what people are looking for when we want people when they pick up Super Sat to go, all right, this tastes like the last beer that I had that I enjoyed.
Now, I'm always going to, rep the summer saturation as the best of the saturation family. Do you have a favorite? Or is it just good old Super Sat?
I like Super Sat, actually, Super Duper Saturation, which is our 8% version of this. That one, I think, is my favorite. It's so dangerous. It's super drinkable at 8%. It's just like Super Sat, but thicker, richer. It's kind of more like, as we go along the spectrum here, the Evening Chorus and the Super Juicii. It's pretty closer to that in terms of body. And that's my favorite. And that one's sort of come back as more of we're brewing it about 3 or 4 times a year. So we'll keep releasing it, sporadically, just because we like it so much.
I think I've seen rebrews of all of the saturation family except saturation, which the one time I got to buy it, it was like, well, we brewed this for Stampede, but I guess you can have some. And I really liked it, and I've never seen it again. Is saturation in the red can coming back?
Yeah, we'll probably bring that back again this coming summer, because I think it does round out that pack. We get that from quite a few people that they want that one back. I think it's only 4% alcohol, so it's a really easy drinking version. One of the problems we have, and when you put a pack out like that has this big fruity one and this 6% Super Sat and this 8% Super Duper, if you try the 4%, we got a lot of feedback saying, it's a bit watery, it's a bit weak, it's lacking flavor. But as long as you're drinking that as your first beer before you move on to the other ones, it's actually fantastic, super refreshing and tasty. So yeah, I think you can expect to see that one come back again.
Wonderful. Chris asks, what's the size of the cabin team now? It's obviously not just the 3 of you. How many people on the cabin team?
No, thank goodness. So I just actually did a count the other day because I'm prepping some NDS stuff, and we're up to 19 staff now. So we've got 12 full-time staff and some part-timers that work in the tap room and 1 half-time delivery driver. So yeah, we didn't expect we'd be this big after 3 years, but we love the people we've been able to assemble as the cabin team, and they're all fantastic human beings, and we're really lucky to have them with us. So, yeah, 19, and we're currently hiring for a sales rep up in Edmonton at the moment. We're going to start pushing up there. And the good news for you all is that because we're pushing a sales rep into Edmonton, it means our Calgary-based rep can start pushing down south shortly as well. So we'll probably, hopefully, try and get more beer down your way as well, and not make Kyle drive up the QE2 every second week with his van to pick it up.
You know, I still am going to have to, because Annex and Establishment don't have bloody vans. So, 88's delivering down here now, and it's lovely. It's one less stop, but I still have to drive up for the other 3. So it's really not a huge... Until all of you get vans, you're not saving me any time.
Well, it's always nice to see your face anyway.
I like stopping it. It's actually really nice. I really stop at cabin because I can have lunch at Annex, and that's entirely the reason. Okay, let's move on to It's Amazing, because I try to keep these to about 12 minutes of beer, and we're already behind. And yes, by the way, I do realize I'm wildly behind on questions and comments. I can see how many I've not got read yet, so I will get to those, I promise. So, It's Amazing Lemon Meringue Pie Ale with lactose.
Amazing.
Let's jump in here. So whose idea was this? Is this one of your homebrew recipes, or is this something that was developed in the last couple of weeks, couple of months?
No, you know what? This one, we offered up a prize 2 years ago for the Cowtown Yeast Wranglers homebrew competition, which is the homebrew club that we all came from, and also the guys from Establishment. They were brewing out of there as well. For the Yeast Wrangler of the Year, first prize gets to come and brew a beer with Cabin Brewing Company. It's taken 2 years to get the thing sorted, but we finally figured it out. And Paul Heslop was the brewer. He's a British guy he's somewhere up in the Midlands area, and he's got this crazy accent. So you have to, his favorite word when he's describing something is, "Oh, it's amazing." So we're like, you know what, we have to call it that. So this is actually a homebrew recipe of his that he'd made a couple of times, and we really, really liked. So when you smell it, you can get the lemon straight away off that. It's crazy.
I did have a question from Deirdre, or actually it was more of a comment, but the idea of the non-alcoholic version being unsaturated. But I mean, everybody seems to be doing non-alcoholic beers. Is there going to be a non-alcoholic Cabin coming out, and will you call it unsaturated?
If we were to make it ourselves, yes, that we should definitely do that. Either unsaturated or desaturated. We are working with another brewer at the moment on a fundraising beer that we're hoping will be a non-alcoholic beer some point later in the year. It's not going to be anytime soon. But it's a huge growing part of the beer market. We personally don't have the capacity in-house to brew one at the moment. It actually takes more work to brew a non-alc beer than it does an alcoholic beer. And we aren't quite there with the recipe development as well. But I think I'd like to get something out at some point. It's becoming way more normalized. You probably get it from the shop, people coming in looking for it. And I think Dry January has really piqued a lot of people's interest as well in trying out these beers. Weirdly, I had a non-alcoholic beer with my breakfast this morning. So there you go. You can have a beer and still get your work done. It's great.
Nice. We'll talk a little bit about brewing capacity and your pipeline over the top of conference there in a bit. But I do really want to get to some comments here because we have quite a few to get through here. Jeremy wants a cask coming to Lethbridge for a cask event.
Do you
guys do casks? I've never seen a Cabin cask.
We're not huge fans of them. They either explode or they're flat or the fruit gets stuck. We've had really bad luck with them. We've run a few in the tap room and we just about destroyed our speaker system. They always go all over the place. They are a lot of fun. Like the event's fun. The tapping of them's fun. We have got some casks around, and now that we've got some additional brewers that can sort of work on making those, I think as restrictions ease and we can get back into normality, then I think we'll start pumping more of those out. So yes, we're coming for you, Lethbridge, with a cask.
Jeremy asks, ESP. Yes, we have a Cabin ESP on the shelf. There's still a little tiny bit of Great Expectations on the shelf. So your wish has been granted, like last month. Come buy it. There's still a little bit left. Single set mix packs were an excellent hops education. I agree. That was so much fun. Really enjoyed that, actually. Forgot that. You know, it's been such a jam-packed couple of years. I forgot single sat happened. I talked about all the other ones that I forgot. There was like 3 separate single hop IPAs that came out of that.
Yeah. That was fascinating too, because everyone had their own favorites, right? And the debates in the tap room were brilliant. I really enjoyed that.
Now, Craig asked, and I'll kind of edit this a little bit. His only real question is, what was your pathway into this? Alberta was almost a desert for good beer 5 to 6 years ago, and then bang, suddenly you're making the best beer in Canada. You talked a little bit about home brewing in university, but where did it go from, hey, this is a fun way to spend my Saturday and then Sunday cleaning up, to this is what I'm going to do for a living, and oh my God, we're really doing this? Like, what was the breaking point between 1994 and 2019 where it went from university hobby to full-time job?
Yeah, it's crazy. So, I mean, I could fill up the entire rest of the hour just talking about that path because there's so much that happened. But in short,
an hour is kind of a soft limit.
Yeah, I think it's like any hobby that starts getting out of control. You start like getting more into it and buying more equipment and making better beer, and then more people are telling you it's good. And there were, three of us as the founders were all competing against each other and brewing and trying each other's beer. So I don't know. I used that phrase earlier, midlife crisis, and I'm only half joking. I did get to my late 30s, and the idea of doing it in my, say, early 30s, I'm like, no, that's way too risky for me. And then I actually listened to a podcast by the Sam Adams founder. I can't remember his name. Jim Koch, I think his name. Cook.
Yes.
And he used the phrase. He's like, what's the worst that's going to happen if you go into it and you fail? You're going to be out of money, but you can go back and get a job and you can carry on your life. But would you rather do that, or would you rather get to your 70s and look back on your life and think, man, I really wish I'd taken the plunge and done that and done what I wanted to do? And I listened to that on a sea train in the middle of winter, traveling down to my boring office job. And I was like, you know what? Screw it. Let's do it. Let's just do it. The worst that can happen is I'm going to lose some money and I can start all over again. So we kind of just took the plunge then. We all had, the other thing that was good with us is that we had a varied background. So Jonas, our head brewer, he was already a commercial brewer, so he had some confidence there. And then I had a communications marketing background, so I sort of could look after the sales marketing side. And then Darren, our third partner, he was a former farmer and then he was a diesel mechanic after that. So that man's got like doubles and triples of every tool you can think of, and he can cut stuff and burn stuff and drive stuff, and he looks after everything else. So between the three of us, we're like, I think we can do this. Let's give it a go. And it was, there was lots of other stuff in between, but that's the short story. Midlife crisis.
Just going to run through these as quick as I can. And when is Boogie's Burgers going to open up a location in your tap room? I would be, honestly, at that point, I just get like, I'd sell my house and just buy an industrial bay from one of the other weird places in that thing and just move in and just, I'd live there and I'd get really fat and I wouldn't care.
Those guys are great. So they've actually come in and done 2 pop-ups in our brewery before, once in summertime where they cooked out on the patio, which was fantastic. And then once at winter, I think it was our first or second anniversary, and it was like -20 out, and they ended up cooking in the back bay of our brewery, and they ended up frying up onions, cooking meat. There was no extraction fan. We cracked the door a little bit, but it was so cold we couldn't really keep it open that much. And then our neighbors, who are a design studio next door, they have like samples of curtains and fabrics and all this stuff. They came in on Monday morning and they're like, were you guys cooking something over the weekend? Because our entire place smells like fried onions. Like,
no, so that must have been someone else.
Lots of beer, said we'd bring in a dehumidifier or something. I don't know. They're really nice neighbors, so they were understanding. But yeah, we'd love it. I think at some point in the next couple of years, we'd like to get a sort of a restaurant going in a cabin as well. It'll be nice to have food to bring more people in, so that we can open our tap room longer during the day as well. So,
which runs into what I was actually going to talk about here in a minute, which is your incredible space crunch, to the point where you have the great beer pipeline to pump it over, because your next door neighbor's not moving. So you have another bay that's like 2 bays over, and you're pumping it up.
Yeah. It would have been so easy to expand into the bay next door, knock down a wall, put some more tanks, yada yada.
But no, you had to do it the much harder way.
Let's do it the more expensive way. So Confluence Distilling is next to us. The 2 bays on the other side of them came up for grabs a year and a half or so ago, which basically allows us to triple our footprint of where we can brew beer and store beer. But the only way to do it was to run a pipe somehow from where we ferment the beer to where we can put it into bright tanks and package the beer. And AGLC, we approached them about potentially doing a pipeline through Confluence, and their first reaction was, nope, you can't do that. You can't run your product through another licensed producer's facility. They recommended we ran a hose out the back door and along to our bay, which
The typical AGLC response, the stupidest one possible. Yes.
Yeah. But they did let us do it. So we had to get engineers' drawings. So we now run a stainless steel pipe that we can connect a hose from the fermenter to this pipe. It goes up the wall. It goes through the ceiling. So we've got like 20-foot ceilings. But we had to build a bulkhead the whole way across that could not be tampered with on the inside of Confluence Distilling. And then it runs down the other side, and that's where we have bright tanks, our canning line, kegging room, and cold storage over there. So it was not cheap, but it means we can produce a lot more beer, which is the end goal, and it works well for us.
Eric asks, is this your first lactose beer? I don't think so, because you've done some sours with lactose.
No, we've used a bit of it. In fact, our first lactose beer was Night Kitchen Pastry Stout, which we did in our first year.
I remember that. That was actually very good. I liked Night Kitchen.
Yeah. So we used it. We did not put lactose on the can, and this was a learning curve for us. We didn't realize that so many people have bad allergies to lactose, or it can affect them quite badly, because someone came up to us and said, is there lactose in this beer? My wife had it, and she's now in the bathroom. So yep. And so he sort of reamed us out for not being upfront about that potential allergen. So now we always put it on a can. If we're using it, we have it right there with the ingredients. And we train our taproom staff just to let folks know when they order it that it does have lactose. So any allergens we're a bit more cautious about now.
Deirdre asks, why is non-alcohol harder to brew? What is it that makes it more complicated?
Essentially, one of the main, there's a bunch of ways that you can do it, but the easiest and I guess main way to do it is that you're essentially making a normal beer, and then you are removing the alcohol at the end of it, so de-alcoholized beer. There is some new technology coming through that allows you to basically ferment for a little bit and then stop that fermentation so that it doesn't build up the alcohol in there. And we're curious about that as to whether that can speed things up for us. But essentially, the traditional way, like most of the German brewers that have been doing these for a long time, will brew a completely normal beer and then they'd essentially boil it so that the alcohol would boil off and then cool it back down again, which does all sorts of weird things to the flavor as well. So it's a tricky one. And, we're sort of running at 100% capacity in cabin at the moment, so we haven't quite got time to do some R&D and try some of these new techniques. And strangely enough, the people that are doing it are very secretive about the methods that they use to remove alcohol from their beer. So we'll have to just follow along with that. I know there is a contract brewer in Calgary that is making non-alcoholic beer, so that could be a route that we could go down as well and work with them to build some recipes.
Wonderful. I'm just going to run through here. Everybody's all about the casks still. So you did not buy, I think you did buy all of the Great Expectations, Kevin, but I think that they had a little bit more for us the last time I was there. So
thanks, Kevin.
Definitely pick up a lemon meringue pie smell, but not sure about the taste. I think the taste is more like candied lemons, like sherbet lemons, or those little lemon candies, like the penny candies sort of thing. It's much more of a candied lemon than a dessert lemon for me, anyway.
So I'll give you if I can give a quick little story here. So funnily enough, this beer, when this is a great example of when people say it's very difficult to scale up a homebrew recipe to a commercial brewery recipe. We bought the lemon puree in for it, threw it into the fermenter partway through fermentation, and the lemon was so sour it actually killed the yeast and then stopped fermentation. So we now had this ginormous tank of Amaaaaazing that was not fermenting. So what we've ended up doing is brewing a second batch of it, using some different lemon puree for it. And so we end up with double the amount of beer. But what we've done with a lot of the first batch that did not ferment out properly is we've actually moved that into bourbon barrels, which is now aging away. So we're doing like a whiskey sour kind of beer, which you are going to see next year. Now, no one knows that, so don't tell anyone, but you can look out for probably a bottled barrel-aged release. It's gone into some Basil Hayden bourbon barrels. So there you go.
Now, this beer I don't know anything about and certainly can't comment on. It sounds like that bourbon barrel age is going to add like some coconut notes and some like richness that's going to come off like pastry shell. I think that could be absolutely stunning. I'm going to avoid the word amazing because it came immediately to mind, but that sounds
Fingers
really
crossed, that's
cool.
the plan.
But of course, it doesn't exist and we don't know anything about it.
We could have just dumped it, but we thought we'd just throw more money at it instead, which is such a great business decision. So who knows? We'll see how it comes out.
I've had a couple of questions about this that I've skimmed over just a little bit, but let's dig a little bit into the design. I mean, I'm as jaded as they come. I've been doing this for, God help me, 22 years now. I don't get geeky. I don't buy T-shirts from breweries. You know, if you give me one, thanks again for the glass establishment. If you give me something, I'll wear it or use it. But, you know, I don't buy stuff. I own, like, cabin socks because the design's so good.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about, like, how good your design is? Now, again, you can feel free to gloat. You did say you were the marketing and design and packaging person. So feel free to just, you know, rub it in a bit. But talk to us a little bit about the design because it's so iconic for cabin, especially with super saturation.
Well, the true brains behind it is literally upstairs from me right now in my house. So my wife's company is Daughter Creative. My wife's been in advertising for more years than I care to think about since we left university. She branched off and opened up her own agency about 4 years ago. And they look after all of our branding and design. So it's literally my in-house design team. So we can talk about stuff over breakfast, and you know, she yells at me when I don't get stuff to her on time, and it's a lot of fun. But their team's good. So Daughter Creative also does they do the branding and labels for Establishment and also for Annex, and they've got a couple of others they're starting to work with now. But they've really sort of developed a good, strong sense of beer branding and what works well and what pops off the shelf. So it's really, I owe it all to them. We come up with the beer, we come up with the name at Cabin, and then we throw it over to Daughter and just say, do something cool. We don't bother briefing them on anything. We just let them run with whatever they want to run with. And yeah, they look after us well. We're really happy with it.
So do you get credit for the bookcase, or is that your wife then?
It was her idea, but I did it. Okay. There you go. She said we should do this, and then I spent 3 days trying to arrange it.
Where did the name Cabin come from then?
So Cabin was, you know, naming the brewery was probably one of the hardest things we did, apart from getting the money we needed for it. We bounced off so many ideas. We looked at breweries like Bellwoods or, you know, Modern Times, just very simple names that could have a nice icon. Like we have our A. I'm not wearing anything with that, but they're a nice A icon.
Everybody's got 4 cans with the logo in front of them, so they know exactly what A you're talking about.
Look at that A, that's what we're after. But we wanted something that reflected less a thing and more sort of evoke memories, and that's what we do with a lot of our cans as well. We like using patterns and names that might evoke a good memory or a fun time. And the whole idea of cabin is not like we are a cabin in the woods and we are, you know, wooden and all those things. It's just like, you know, what is your cabin? Is it a tent? For me, it is at the moment. Maybe one day I'd like to have a real cabin and not just a cabin brewery. You know, but people have good memories about places where they'd go and stay at their shitty cabin out in the middle of nowhere, or their really fancy cabin on the shoe swaps or something like that. So I don't know, the name just kind of stuck. We were throwing around names like campfire and camping, and, you know, where are you happiest? In a holiday home. And in New Zealand, we call it a batch. That's what we call a holiday home or a crib. And then cabin just kind of stuck, and we were batting it around. And then we threw a few names over to Daughter Creative, and then they came up with a sort of name thing with the A in the middle. And as soon as we saw that A, we're like, that's what we need. We could see that on T-shirts and on cans and on the walls and all that stuff. So yeah, we stuck with it. Of course, I can't pronounce it very well. Apparently, my accent's gotten better over the years, but a lot of people thought I was saying Kevin, as in the guy that bought your ESB. When I'd pick up the phone and answer, it's like, hello, Kevin Brewing. I'm like, Kevin Brewing? I was looking for Kevin. Yeah, I'm getting better at it.
I'm sure it's fine. I can't imagine it being a real issue for anyone. Wow, I am never going to get through all of the questions and comments. So apologize to people if we're at 6:33, and for anyone who ever says I rush through these things, this is your tasting. It is 6:33. We are not done the second beer. Like I said, there has been a little bit of pent-up demand for a cabin event with you here, Hayden. So thank you again for doing it, because this is 2 years of delayed gratification for people just boiling through, which I'm absolutely loving. What does a collaboration with Cabin look like? How do how do you approach a collaboration? Because you've done the collaborations with a lot of different people. We're going to have a collaboration beer later on.
Yep.
How does that go? Like,
honestly, they all look different. We've done a ton, and you know, we have reached out to some people that we want to do collabs with. Kilter was one. We'll get to that later, but the Super Juicii Kilter was one just because we saw their presence on social media and we're like, I like what they're doing. They look like they're doing a good thing, and we'd like to work with them. We still haven't even met the team out there. We've just done it all virtually because it's been throughout the pandemic time. But
so what you're saying is collaborations is basically just Instagram Tinder for beer. It's like, oh, I like what they're doing. Yeah. Let's just see if we can do a beer together.
Look at your cans. Yeah, basically. But you know what, collaboration day always kind of looks the same, and it's, you know, folks will turn up at the brewery at like 8 or 9 in the morning. We'll have coffee and breakfast, and then, you know, folks will jump in and help out with the brew process if they haven't done it. If it's with another brewery that is, you know, seasoned brewers, the last thing they want to do is get together and brew. So really, they'll turn up more like midday. We'll have lunch and then we'll go out drinking for the rest of the day. But for some others, like we did a collaboration with Routine Deodorant, and you know, they hadn't even stepped foot in a brewery before, so we had their whole team down. You know, we went through all the ingredients, we got them to help out with the brew process, they added the grain, they did some dry hopping, they did a bunch of stuff, and then we basically just hang out. And you know, with a collaboration, what we're looking for is someone who sort of shares our either aesthetic or just our overall view of the world and that we want to work with. A lot of it's around trying to sort of open us up to different audiences that might not have ever heard of Cabin before. Like the Routine Deodorant one's a great one. Like probably more than half of the people that buy Routine Deodorant probably don't give a toss about craft beer or have never heard of Cabin Brewing. So it was good for us to do that, and then vice versa. You know, they come in with a big box of stuff for all the stuff, and our staff are now all wearing the stuff, and the place smells a lot better than it did before. So yeah, we try and look for people that are doing really good stuff. If it's a brewery like that are making good beer, we've got a collaboration. I can probably jump into it now. We've got a collaboration out this Friday with another brew co. They're called out of BC, and they approached us and said, "Hey, you know, we also make hazy IPAs a lot, and we think we could work well together." So, you know, we had them out before Christmas and did a brew day with them, and yeah, come Friday, and then next week for you folks down south, we've got
we're going to make the trip up on Tuesday.
Yeah, we've got this big, giant 10% triple hazy IPA, which the staff are drinking like crazy. We managed to get it packaged, I think, yesterday, and it's really, really good. It's tasting fantastic. It's probably one of the best, bigger hazy beers we've done. So watch out for that one for sure. It's going to be a goodie.
Craig, yeah, so you bring back Black is Beautiful, because that was a huge hit down here.
Yeah, maybe. We haven't figured it. Like, charity work for us it's a big deal. We want to do as much as we possibly can. We're just meeting at that at the moment about how we roll that out for this coming year as well. And it's a tough one, right? There's not enough. There's so many charities out there that we could be working with and doing beers with that we're not sure. I would like to do it again. Personally, I didn't. My personal taste, I didn't actually like that beer very much. I found it a little bit too roasty and coffee heavy for my liking, but it sold really well, and we raised what did we get with that? It's like $20-some thousand. We're able to donate to charity out of that one, so that was fun.
Actually, that's a funny question that occurs to me. What was your favorite beer that maybe didn't do as well as you hoped versus your beer that you weren't really sold on yourself personally as a beer drinker, but just went nuts for Cabin and did very, very well?
So let me think. That's a goodie. Like a lot of the darker, more traditional styles don't sell very well. Like we really like them. Like any sort of lager, you know, an English mild, an English bitter. Those very classic styles of beer. I think because
Simple Pleasures blew out of here so fast you wouldn't believe. But okay.
Easy drinking. We like those beers. But they don't sell super well. Like the Haze Bombs sell really well. The sour beers tend to sell really well. So we keep making those. I'm trying to think of a beer that I just didn't. You know, some of the kettle sours I'm not huge on. We did one with pomegranate and cherry, which I really didn't love. My wife loved it. So
was that in the pinkish can? I think that was the one I was thinking of, was saying this wasn't your first beer with lactose.
It wasn't with lactose. There was another one we did called Staycation that had lactose in it, and that was a fruited sour with
Yeah, and
lactose.
that wasn't my cup of tea. I thought that was a bit, yeah, but
Yeah, yeah. It was lower alcohol and it was sweet, and I didn't love it. But again, other people did, and they just rave about it. So we always try and balance. We always want to make sure we're sort of doing hazy, sour, sort of more West Coast style, classic style, hazy. It's sort of in that sort of rotation. We want to make sure we have all of those beers coming out on a regular basis. And then sometimes we just throw some wacky stuff in as well for fun.
I mean, I do love your hazies. Like, I love me some summer saturation. By the way, folks, we're moving on to evening chorus here. I do love summer saturation, but I think if there was anything I absolutely needed you to brew again, it would actually be Seasons Past. The West Coast IPA. That was absolutely spot on. Absolutely loved that beer. Sold out far too quickly for my liking.
So we've got our Sunshine Rain, which is our core, which is a West Coast IPA. It's a little less bitter and a little less malty than what you'd expect from it, just because that's the style that we like. But yeah, with Season Pass, we sort of pulled it back a bit to a classic West Coast style, so very resiny, very bitter. And now we're running through our Sphere series. So we did Troposphere and Stratosphere as our West Coast IPAs, and we've got another one coming up again. No one knows about this, but
no, of course not.
Next week we're going to have another West Coast IPA called Mesosphere as part of that Sphere series releasing as well. So with those, we're just playing around with different hop characteristics. So this next one we've got coming out, it's got Columbus, Centennial, Amarillo, and Strata hops. So it's going to have a bit of those older school resiny piney hops, and then some of the newer school sort of more tropical fruity hops as well.
All right, so we've all got evening chorus in our glasses now. Probably some people who are just going hard have had it in their glass for a little while. Walk us through evening chorus. This is a cool beer.
Yeah. So this one's definitely a bit thicker than the other two that we've tried already. This is our second iteration of another beer we did called Dawn Chorus, which is New Zealand hopped hazy IPA. Now, I'm from New Zealand, as you can probably tell from my accent. I love the hops that come out of New Zealand. They're a bit more difficult to get over here, but when I was a home brewer over there, it was just so much variety, and it was really easy to get your hands on a lot of the experimental hops that were coming out of the hop fields in New Zealand. They've got a really good program there where they're crossbreeding and building new cultivars. But a lot of the New Zealand hops have this very it's a very sort of floral, ripe fruit, quite earthy as well. They're definitely different to most other hops you get definitely from America, definitely from Europe. Pretty similar to what you get in Tasmania and Southern Australia, and to an extent South Africa as well. But we wanted to, I love this can just because it's got all New Zealand native birds on it. It's got these New Zealand hops in there that, I don't know, it just reminds me of being back at home. And then when I pair that with a New Zealand meat pie in at the tap room, it's a really good, it just makes me feel good. So we try and do these little pet projects as we go along to make beer that we want to make as well.
And I've had one person say very fruity, some person says like more earthy than fruity, one person says it's like the aroma and flavor are very different from each other. This is already splitting some people. Like, I expected the controversial one to be It's Amazing. And it's the evening chorus. It's like splitting folks. I like it. I thought this was going to be like safe as safe because I really like evening chorus.
Yeah. So this one is, I really like it. I think for a hazy, it's got a very complex malt character to it as well. So I was actually looking through the recipes earlier, and this one's crazy, the amount of different grains that we put into this beer. It's got Pilsner malt, Golden Promise, Munich malt, flaked oats, flaked barley, flaked rye. So that rye gives it a bit more of a earthy note as well.
It definitely
which maybe from the hops it may not be. But yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one. Like when we brew these, like Jonas, our head brewer, has not brewed with New Zealand hops very much. So we're really ordering these hops based off my experience using them and then what we're seeing on the tasting notes come through from the hop manufacturer as well, and sort of blending them out. It's sort of like it's like if you go to a grocery store and pick up some food you've never seen before and like, you know what, I'm not quite sure. You smell it, you look at it and go, yeah, I think I'm going to sear this and then serve it with a cream sauce. And that feels like it's going to be right. So he does that most of the time with beers that we are not familiar with the recipes. And honestly, he nails it most of the time. Oh, which just reminds me of a beer that I think I know that I didn't really like. If I can go back to that. And if anyone we had a Dunkelweizen many moons ago, so a dark wheat beer called Nocturne, and we used a hop called HBC 586, which was an experimental hop variety, which throws off notes of coconut and sort of oak and sort of a barrel-aged smell.
I remember that, but I have no memory of how that tasted.
Yeah.
I know it wasn't that long ago. It literally couldn't have been longer ago than 2019, but I've no memory of that. It's been a weird 2 years.
It has been. A lot of beer in between as well.
The one that I think I've always wondered, like, why everybody else loves and I don't, is Triple Threat. I love everything you do for hazies, and Triple Threat's never done it for me, and I don't know why. Like seasons past, summer saturation, all of that. Sunshine, rain, as much as you can give me. Superset, yes, please. Yeah. Triple Threat never did it for me, and I don't know why.
It's funny how that works, because for me, that's one of my favorite of our hazies as well. I think it's got Nelson Sauvin in it, which is which is the same hop that you're having right now in Evening Chorus. New Zealand hop, very unusual, throws off some winey notes, some sort of unusual, fruity notes. But that has Galaxy as well. But then Sabro, which is another hop that really throws some people off, because Sabro can give you notes of coconut and mint and sort of this woody camphor note as well. It's weird. And literally for that one, the three owners picked our favorite hop and said, let's just make a beer with all these three hops in there. It came out okay, sort of, for most people.
This turned out fine for me. I like this just fine. Eric asks, why is the hops industry in New Zealand so strong?
I think it's to sound really fancy in French, it's about the terroir. So like that we grow good grapes in New Zealand, and it's just that it's got that perfect balance. So to grow hops, you need sort of quite fertile, dry soil. You need just the right number of daylight hours at just the right time of the year for a certain number of weeks of the year for the hops to really develop their characters. So it's like parts of France and Italy where grapes grow well. Typically, hops grow really well as well. And that's why we don't really see in Canada. You can grow some hops up here. Like in my backyard, I grow Cascade and Centennial, and they grow really well because it's something like 10 weeks of sunshine hours of more than 10, 11 hours a day or something like that. Whereas for some of these more fruity tropical ones, you need 14, 15, 16 weeks of sunshine and the right temperature and the right conditions to have them. So there's just a small part of New Zealand that really grows all the hops as well. And, you drive around that area and there's these massive big hop vines growing in these farms, and it's just a perfect place. And if you look at where hops are grown around the world, it's concentrated in a small part of North America and in America. So like the Pacific Northwest is where almost all of the American hops are grown. New Zealand, it's a small area. You go to Europe and there's like isolated areas through there that most of them grow as well. So yeah, it's a funny one. You just have to have the right growing conditions and the right temperature.
I do love that you kind of, open up with this scare quotes thing of terroir and then give me like a textbook definition of what terroir is in terms of like light conditions and soil conditions and tiny microclimates.
Yeah.
That was a very Fox News explanation. Stewed pineapple is a good call, Craig. I like that on this one. Yeah, okay. Justin has new collab coming this year with Born Brewing #1 Neighbor Redux.
Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day. We haven't met with them yet to figure that out, but we almost certainly will do that. We've done it 2 years in a row now, and they're awesome people. They're right across the road. They've been the most supportive neighbors anyone could have as far as a brewery goes. So,
and they're literally right across the road. Like you could throw a rock from Cabin to Bourne, Colorado and not have to work hard. Like it's really close.
Yeah, the first one we did was called 87 Steps, because that's literally from our front door to their front door. It's 87 Hayden steps. I'm 6'2", so for Wade, he's a bit shorter, so he was more like 95 steps, but we stuck with 87 steps. So yeah, we can see them, on the busy weekends. If these big crowds coming, we'll like ring over and say, "Hey, there's this pedal pub group coming over. They're a bit rowdy. You better watch out." So we look out for each other and help each other out where we can. So they're good people. So we'll definitely do another beer.
We actually did a Born Colorado feature a few weeks ago, so that was a lot of fun.
Right. Who came on to do that one? Was it?
I think it was just one of those ones where we couldn't get anyone from Born Colorado, so I just kind of like soloed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just one of those ones where we just did it and went for it. It was good.
Yeah.
So if you'll pardon us for 2 seconds, we're going to quickly talk about what we've got coming up next week. And we have 2 things coming up next week, both very barley focused. For our beer, so 1 week from tonight, we are doing a Bomber Brewing out of Vancouver. Now these cats were in the store before, years ago, and they were kind of like a discount craft brewer. Not as discount as like Bowen Island or anything, but like, their IPAs were a couple $3 cheaper than everybody else's. They've kind of gone back to the drawing board, rebranded, taken the brewing quality up a little bit, or at least that's what they say they've done. Now, I like the idea of a rye Pilsner more than I like most things. I think that sounds incredible, but I want to see, because I keep hearing great reviews. Oh, Bomber Brewing, they're so different than they used to be. They're so good now. Well, I kind of want to find out, and this is one that I'm absolutely going in completely blind, going in completely cold. This is going to be a reaction video as much as it's going to be anything else, as much as I hate the term, because I want to know, have they changed? Because I know I have my biases about these folks. I just want to see how different it is. So, 2 different pills. Their Avant-Garde Pilsner, which is a Bohemian style, and then their Rye Pilsner called Harvest. And then 2 hazies, Cloud Spotting and Mousy. Their Cloud Spotting is their Session IPA, and the Mousy is their classic hazy IPA. So, love it, hate it. You're immediately excited, immediately turned off. Please don't tell me I'm trying to go into this completely cold. Then, Friday night, we are back to Scotch tasting, which means I'm back to taking a cab home after the tasting. And we have 5 single malts up for offer. You might have guessed by the boxes, but we're going to have Lee Hansen as a guest because he is our Hunter Lang representative. And we have 5 single malts, all by Hunter Lang, all in the old malt cask family. We have 1 peaty one, that's the Ardmore 12. We have a pair of 14-year-olds. We have Fetter Cairn and we have Macduff. You might know Macduff as the Devon single malt in this market because Macduff has realized, as I have come to know, that selling it as Macduff just doesn't sell. I consider it like, the curse of the English play. Glendullan 17. This is an absolutely cracking whiskey. I expect this to be my favorite. And then finally, a Thrust 21. These are really fascinating. Unless the alcohol of the barrel naturally dips below 50%, they are always 50% alcohols. They are always a elevated strength, but never cast strength. They sit above the Hepburn's Choice series, but below first editions in their range of whiskeys. They're just excellent, challenging, different whiskeys from the Lang family. And, Lee Hansen is always an excellent guest. Tickets for this are $40. You will get 1 ounce of each of these, including an ounce of the 21 year, which is $217 on the shelf. So you are most definitely getting your money's worth on that one. That will be Friday night. We are going to make 2 kits. Each kit is 23, so we will have 46 kits available. When they sell out, we will not be making more, and the Scotch tastings always sell out. So do get yours early. I'm not saying that it's a high pressure thing. I'm saying that is the voice of experience because the Scotch tasting always sells out.
What's the actual date of it?
That is January the 28th. 8th. 9th is Saturday, I'm pretty sure.
Well, then it's on the 8th.
Then it's the 8th, yes. Sorry, January 28th. No, I'm not launching I will have these bottles filled tomorrow, Kevin. We've done none of the work for building these kits yet, so I'm definitely not launching this for this Friday. It is next Friday, the 28th.
Not much of a runway.
Especially since I told Aaron that, I wanted the promo done for tomorrow, and he laughed at me and told me I was an idiot. Then he made fun of my dead mother.
Whoa!
That Aaron Troza, man, classy guy.
Asshole.
Justin asks, is Love Shack going to come back?
Ooh, well, I don't know. Valentine's Day's coming up, and we really do love 88 Brewing Company. I'd really love to see something coming back with them. So I don't know. You're going to have to wait till close to Valentine's Day and just see. Maybe the romance will be rekindled.
All right, good. So confirmed, definite yes. And if not, blame Hayden. Speaking of collaborations, Super Juicii. This sold out really quick the first time.
really
This
did.
is, at least for me, the second time round. You might have had another release in between, but
Nope,
tell us about
this is
Super
number 2.
Juicii. And I mean, the obvious question would be like, tell us about collaborations. We already really had a great question about that earlier. So tell us about Super Juicii.
So Super Juicii, like I said, we reached out to them just because we liked the look of what they were doing, the types of beers they were doing, their branding, all that fun stuff. We didn't actually realize they've got a pretty big following here in Alberta. So when we announced this beer and released it, it was kind of took us by surprise as well. We really love this beer. We brewed this beer the first time around, and I'm sure everyone's getting into it now, but just I love the aroma of this. We took our super saturation and we took their flagship hazy, which is called Juicii, Juicii, and just kind of threw everything together and bumped it up a little bit stronger as well. So it's got, I'm just looking now, it's got Citra, Mosaic, Eldorado as the 3 main hops in it, and a little bit of Magnum just for bittering, but not much in there. So the Citra Mosaic comes from the Supersat. The Eldorado comes from their Juicii. They actually use, I believe, Citra Mosaic in theirs as well. So there's some crossover there. And then we got Daughter Creative. We just threw their branding and our branding together, and they came up with this cool octopus armed sort of version of the Supersat can. And yeah, this beer we brewed it a second time now. Funnily enough, the reason we brewed it now is that we wanted to enter this into the Canadian Brewers Cup, which was a new beer awards that was supposed to be being judged this month. It's been cancelled because of COVID, which screws it up. But hey, it just means we're going to have to brew it another time to enter it into a competition as well.
That doesn't hurt my feelings at all, no.
No, but it's got this really beautiful light color. The haze on it's really, really good.
It's a beautiful glass too, by the way. I do want to just dip in again. Like, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but just the packaging, the branding, like it's absolutely spectacular.
We are lucky because the designs we get just lend themselves so well to fun retro things. Like that could be something you maybe not in the shape of like a sort of a wine shaped beer glass, but it might have been a pattern you saw at your auntie's cabin when you were a 5-year-old, or your grandmother might have had that as a dinner plate
It
pattern.
reminds me of the Dairy Queen water. So growing up, and this is going to be a wild tangent, which people who are regular viewers are very used to at this point. Growing up, my grandparents, every Friday, like they didn't eat in restaurants, but my parents at the time were busy building Andrew Hilton, and they dumped us on my grandparents a very great amount. So we spent a lot of time at my grandparents' house, and they didn't eat in restaurants per se, but every Friday they went to Dairy Queen. And they were like known by name at this Southside Dairy Queen, because they only lived like 3 blocks away. And they always had these Dairy Queen water glasses, which would have been, vintage 1988 or so at this point. This looks like the sort of pattern that came on like the promotional glasses that you got in like the late 80s or very, very early 90s for me, on
awesome.
like free promotional glasses, and I love that.
The branding is working. That's exactly what we're going for, so that's good. Yeah, I don't know. As far as this is probably, it's definitely in my top 3 of any of the hazy IPAs that we've made. I just love it. I was so happy to make it again, and to see it back out there again. I only managed to get 1 4-pack for myself out of this before it all sold, so I'm rationing them like crazy.
Yeah, that was something that's actually come in the comments. Is like, I very rarely ration beers. Like it's not a thing I like to do. I don't like to put purchase limits on anything other than Ardbeg. But this was one, when it first came out, I actually had to enforce a purchase limit. And then Craig reminded me that the last time we did this and we had the purchase limit and sold out within like 24 hours, I actually bought a 4-pack for me. And I'd like sampled 2 out with the staff, and I had like my 2 cans that were ready to go home for me. And Craig came in and was like, bummed he didn't get any, so I gave him one of my last 2 cans. And that's the only reason he got to try it last time.
That's how it works. We have these discussions out the back of our place. It's like, well, we need to send some to Lethbridge and some to Edmonton, and the tap room needs some, and staff want to get some. So it's this constant toing froing. So yeah.
And do you want to talk about that a little bit? Like, I mean, the idea of being this like super in demand brewery that everybody wants more than you can brew, and everybody must want to collaborate with and want exclusive brews from and everything else. How do you filter through that and say, well, it needs to be here, it needs to be here, this needs to be tap room only, or we can only do so many collabs or so many exclusives a year? How do you sort all that out? That's got to be a massive task.
Yeah, we keep saying these are good problems to have. Like, they're problems nonetheless. They give you a headache, but yeah, we just try and be as fair as possible. And, you know, we always make sure if we're going to do a beer that's going to be stuck in Calgary, we're quite clear about that and say this is a Calgary only release for these reasons. But, you know, that's kind of the reason why we've grown a bit more in the last year and that we've bought a few more tanks, is so we can start pushing some more of this beer out. Because it sucks. It's like you're saying, I spend most of my time saying, no, can I get some of this? No, we don't have any. Can I get some of this? No. It's like, would you like some retrospections? Like, no, we've already got some of that. We just want some of the super juicy. It's like, well, let's just make what the people want and get more of that out there. So yeah, that's going to be, I think this coming year we're able to bump up our production by about 30%. So that's going to help us out with doing more seasonals, and we're going to be increasing the size of the batches of our seasonals as well. So it's not just a, you know, release it and it's gone in a day. They're actually going to stick around for a little bit longer, which is fun.
Awesome. Well, Hayden, thank you so much. We're going to wrap things up here. I'll talk to you for a minute after we get the cameras off. But
yeah,
thank you. This was, you know what, I built this up and hyped this up as like, Cabin's finally joining us. And you know what? It more than delivered. The comments were absolutely incredible. Thank you. I can't remember the last time I had this backlog of comments to get through. Thank you all for being so engaged. Thank you, Hayden, for joining us. I hyped this up to the point where it couldn't deliver, and it still over-delivered. This was better than I could have hoped. I was actually having a bit of a bad afternoon, and then this just completely turned it around. So this was wonderful.
Awesome. So thanks to you and all of your customers. So thanks for drinking Cabin. We appreciate it.
Hey, you know what? If you brew beer like this, everybody's going to want it. So thank you so much.
More coming.
Thank you to everyone who watched tonight. This was a great deal of fun for me. Thank you for buying us out of the tasting, by the way. We actually had to make more packs this week, which was a new experience. It hasn't been like that since like summer last year, so that was really nice. But yes, good night, everyone. Thank you so much. We will talk to you next week for Bomber Brewing. Good night.